here with Mario, and we're going to talk about economics, talk about gold, and some contentions you had with an earlier video, I think, that I had made. So go ahead and start where you want to start. Right.
Yeah, I made a list of stuff here to ask, but I just wanted to make sure I had points, because I tend to get disorganized if I just don't have something. The big question I have, the first question I have is you had recommended gold as a hedge against inflation, which it typically is. At least I've known that much about gold. But I haven't ever purchased gold or sold gold or anything like that. And I've heard friends who've said that, there's some pretty difficult tax consequences for selling gold. And there's some, there can be commissions involved that make it kind of iffy to get into gold. And also, right now the price of gold is pretty high, and gold can bubble. It certainly did back in the 80s, right? And it spiked up and then it collapsed in a couple of years. So it can do that. It's not a perfect hedge. So I guess I'm interested in discussing that general area.
Cool. Well, I have just begun my buying of gold. I have yet to sell anything. But when you buy gold, you basically can do it straight from the mint, like a PAMP or a Swiss credit. But that normally comes with a significant premium, because it is a company that does have to pour its resource into melting the gold and stamping it out into whatever bars. So it's much cheaper to either buy direct from a gold dealer, if there is a local gold dealer around your general area, or to do something on the internet. But there is, of course, the security concerns with things like eBay and buying, high-priced commodities over eBay, and that's understandable. But if you don't want to deal with that, you can deal with the higher premiums and buy direct from, say, PAMP's website or something like that. In selling the gold is sold sometimes with not a premium, but a little under market price, so that it can be melted down and used for jewelry or something like that. And in that case, you would want to find some sort of jeweler manufacturer. And they're the people who buy the gold directly. Or, again, you could resell it on an open market thing like eBay. But it is more work to sell physical gold than it is to sell stock, certainly, which can happen with just a click of a button. But what is the reason one would go through that hassle is just the security that the commodity would afford you.
Okay, you'd mentioned selling gold and buying rupees or yuan or something like that as another currency. And would you sell the gold right into those other currencies, sell it into dollars, and then buy the foreign currency? How would that work?
Right. You can buy foreign currencies like a stock option these days. It's listed just like you would a normal stock with the 4 digits of whatever, and each world currency has one of those. So you can do that right through your broker or an online brokerage.
Okay.
And in that, then, in my case, if I was to make a significant investment like I plan to in gold, I would then liquidate that by selling the gold on the market, converting that back into dollars, and then taking that money and investing it into what is essentially like a stock option, where I would be buying a foreign currency.
A stock option, or
it's
like
not. Well, no, it's not a stock option, but it presents itself like a stock option through a brokerage, like I said, where it's bought and sold just like you would any other stock.
Oh, okay. So you made a comment about the kosher way banks make money, which I took from your comment was through charging fees for services as opposed to through the fractional reserve banking process where they sort of generate.
Sure.
And I have to say that I spent a lot of time, especially the last couple of days preparing for this, looking up a lot of stuff about what money actually is, because I had a vague notion that it was more than just currency, but I wasn't aware of how many ways money is I guess accounted. I mean, there's 4 different classes of things that are money, M0 through M3 or something, and they include various degrees of things that aren't currency, and that was not surprising, but certainly eye-opening.
Sure.
So some of that money is created when the banks, take the money in and lend it out again, and they take some of that back in again and lend it again. So they create there's more active money in the system than there's actual physical dollars in the system. And I guess I'm curious if you view that as legitimate, and secondly, if what was the second question there? I'll start with the first question, and we'll come back to it.
Well, the idea that I think it would be far more legitimate, although I don't know if it would be completely legitimate, at least in my opinion, but it would be far more legitimate if the banks presented themselves not as a repository of your wealth, but as a borrower of your wealth. That when you think of a savings account, you think of that as a repository of your savings, right? But it's not in that. It's not just a vault with your dollar bills or your checks from whatever, from your work or whatever it might be. And in that, then the bank has this ability to lend your money out and collect interest on it. It would seem to me that, and best I understand historically anyway, the bank started merely as a repository, and you would be charged a fee for that safe keeping of gold coin or whatever the currency happened to have been. But the idea of merely lending out money in a way that keeps a lot of the reserve, like keeps a lot of money in the bank instead of only a few percent like it is today, I think would be really a step in the right direction. If we're going to allow banks to lend out people's money, it needs to be done in such a way that it isn't like what we're doing now, where the amount of money that banks have to keep on the books or in their vault is significantly less than what their accounts credit for.
I mean, the point there is that people don't withdraw a lot of their money on a day-to-day basis. I mean,
right.
you have operating things that people pull a little bit out of my checking account. Certainly, it's a lot of activity, but it's not. I don't know. I mean, I see your point. I mean, and that certainly is a phenomenon that contributed to bank panics, right? Is when the banks have so little in the way of reserves locally that they cannot distribute the money, and people will. I mean, because if you had every depositor come to a bank and say, "Give me my money today," that's not going to happen, right? They're going to have to call in some serious favors from the Fed or other banks, which is an interesting system. That I finally understand a little bit better anyway, which is that, at the end of the day, every bank has to have a certain amount of its actual deposits as cash equivalent reserves, right? And that's what the overnight Fed rate comes from. And I didn't really understand that part of the process so well until, again, I did some reading to prepare for this.
Right on.
It was kind of fun. I want to really understand one of the comments you made early on in your video was that when the bank goes bankrupt, it can't collect on the loan anymore, and that seemed counterintuitive to me.
The idea, right. I might have been making too simple of an example. What I was getting at was the credit bubble is started by the bank, and if the bank is no longer in operation, then you don't have the means to fulfilling that obligation of credit. When you have a transfer of say mortgages or whatever to another bank, that's obviously a different deal. But in that transfer of credit, it doesn't really solve much of the problem. And there are still situations where people don't get the money that they deserve, and banks closing is still a significant deal.